Kia ora, tato katoa. Mil gracias, querida Juliana, por tus palabras generosas. Es un placer estar aquí con todos ustedes. And in English, it's great to be here to celebrate the launch of the Latin America New Zealand Business Council's Young Professional Network in Auckland. Peace, prosperity, and planet. My proposition to you tonight is that it's these three constructs which will anchor the relationships between New Zealand and the countries of Latin America into the future. I will make my case, looking back, sharing with you a personal and professional journey from the head to the toe of the region to which I have devoted 1/3 of my 36-year career in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade. Indeed, I will seek to convince you that I am the New Zealand public servant with the most Latin American kilometers on my odometer. And while acknowledging the serious human and economic impact and loss brought about by the COVID-19 epidemic upon the peoples in our countries, I will make the case for an optimistic future, one which can be shaped by young people, such as those who have joined this network that we launched tonight. Beginning with peace. My Latin American journey began in the Conference on Disarmament in Geneva in 1993. I was about 30 at the time. This conference meets in the room known as the Council Chambers in the Palais des Nations, the original home of the League of Nations. Delegates labor under the gaze of murals from the 1930s by the Catalan artist José María Sert, a master painting in the tradition of Velázquez, El Greco, and Goya. These murals depict human progress as it toils through the challenges of health, technology, freedom, and peace. And just as an aside, how relevant do they remain today, 90 years on? In that room, 5 colossal Dantesque figures representing the world's continents grasp each other's hands in apocalyptic triumph at the dome of the ceiling. So, as a young New Zealand diplomat, I felt no pressure. Back in 1993, New Zealand, Australia, and Mexico had finally decided to join forces to secure a consensus to launch the negotiations on a comprehensive nuclear test ban treaty, one that would end all nuclear tests in the atmosphere, underground, and underwater. Cast your mind back to those decades of devastating nuclear testing in the Pacific, and imagine the commitment of a young public servant sent to Geneva to do this work. Imagine the privilege not only of working in that room, but with one of Mexico's most distinguished diplomats, Embajador Miguel Marín Bosch. He chaired the first year of the 3-year arduous negotiations completed in 1996. Jayanta Dhanapala, the Sri Lankan diplomat, who then became Undersecretary General to Kofi Annan in the UN, recalled Ambassador Marín Bosch as having prodigious expertise and mordant wit, and he accurately noted that he was the bane of the nuclear weapon states. One of my civil society friends, Rebecca Johnson, recalled on his death in 2017 the unfailing kindness and generosity he showed to non-governmental representatives and to young diplomats, such as me. She said, "He taught us so much about diplomatic strategies and tactics and was one of the wisest and most passionately committed of his generation. So my mind was made up. That experience was quite transformative, and I decided to put Latin America at the top of the list of my future postings in my career, and I finally made it to Mexico for 5 months as the acting ambassador in 2017. Mexico continues to be a close partner of New Zealand in the search for peace through arms control and disarmament. This year marks the 75th anniversary of the atomic bombings in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We have seen this year what a struggle it has been for the world to respond to the COVID-19 crisis. How would we cope with the massive deaths and the horrendous suffering caused by a nuclear holocaust? Experts have warned for a long time that no state, no organization, no country can prepare for or deal with the effects of nuclear war. So if we cannot prepare, we must prevent. And that is why New Zealand signed up to the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, and another 18 of its signatories are Latin American countries. So like climate change, nuclear disarmament is not a job that we can leave for future generations. It is the time now. We must deal with it now. It was out of the ravages of World War II that nations pledged to save successive generations from the scourge of war, and I encourage you, members of the Young Professionals Network, to seek out opportunities for cooperation with your counterparts in Latin America on this still highly relevant global security challenge. Moving now to my second theme, prosperity. And in this, I'm going to echo many of the comments that Inji has made here tonight as well. So New Zealand's trade recovery strategy was launched by ministers in June. And its aim is to position New Zealand in the best possible way to recover from the impacts of the pandemic and to seize new opportunities for exports and for investment. As you know, our key exporting services sectors, education and tourism, have been very hard hit, and as a result of our necessary border restrictions. Overseas visitors in April this year were virtually zero, whereas more than 300,000 visited in the month of April last year. And of course, this has had a very big impact on what had been the very promising increase in the dynamic of interchanges between New Zealanders and Latin Americans in the context of our growing bilateral relationships. But tonight, my message to you is this: let's work together for a global economic recovery that protects the most vulnerable, that creates jobs, and that maintains supply chains and open markets and the connections between entrepreneurs. The World Trade Organization, as you know, is extremely important to New Zealand because it is one of the main places to uphold international trade rules. We've joined a new multi-party interim arbitration arrangement. To try to, in this endeavor, are Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Costa Rica, Guatemala, Mexico, and Uruguay. So let's make it our business to make this work. An important component in our trade recovery strategy is to strengthen Asia-Pacific regional trade. APEC can be used to build consensus around policies to support recovery and push back against protectionism. Let's work together from this year through next year as New Zealand hosts APEC 21. We have Chile, Peru, and Mexico as members alongside us. And just today, Colombia had its guest status confirmed for another 3 years. As Inji pointed out, plurilateral negotiations and agreements are a way of avoiding deadlock in multilateral forum, and they're a way of pathfinding to the future. Let's work together on two, where New Zealand, together with one Latin American partner, are founders. The first is the Digital Economic Partnership Agreement. Chile is the founding partner alongside New Zealand and Singapore there. Let's work together on the agreement on climate change, trade, and sustainability, where Costa Rica is our founding partner alongside New Zealand. This concerted, open plurilateralism is a realistic and optimistic path for trading architecture between New Zealand and the countries of Latin America in the future. We also want to intensify our trade diversification strategy. So that's about expanding the comprehensive and progressive agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership with Chile, Peru, and Mexico being members. It's also about progressing the negotiations with the Pacific Alliance countries, Chile, Mexico, Peru, and Colombia. And it's about progressing agreements with Mercosur, the trading arrangement that brings together Argentina, Brazil, Uruguay, and Paraguay. And now my final theme, the planet. You all know that Latin America stretches to almost 13% of the surface of the Earth. You all know that it's surrounded by the wonderful oceans of the Pacific, Atlantic, and the Southern Ocean, the Caribbean Sea, the Gulf of Mexico. You all know that the Andes mountain chain, El Cordillero, is the backbone that hosts that rare ecosystem, the Paramo. You all know about the Amazon and the Atlantic rainforests. You know about the mighty rivers and the aquifers. And you know that the two most biodiverse countries in the world are Brazil and Colombia. Just 2 nights ago, on Tuesday, I watched the new David Attenborough documentary it's on Netflix, it's called A Life on Our Planet. And he reflects upon the defining moments of his lifetime and the devastating changes he has seen through it. The film addresses some of the biggest challenges facing life on our planet, providing a snapshot of global nature loss in a single lifetime. And with that documentary comes a powerful message of hope for future generations. As Attenborough points out, some of the potential solutions to help save our planet. So we all know that in rebuilding our societies in New Zealand and in Latin America post-COVID, we have to do that, tackling the defining challenge of our generation, climate change. The threat in this region in the Pacific is perhaps greater than any other. Some of the climate-affected nations in the world, some of the most climate change-affected nations in the world are in our front garden. Sea level rise poses an extreme threat, and they are paying the price for our collective inaction. They rely on the United Nations, they rely on countries like New Zealand and the countries of Latin America to make political decisions, to make the commitments, and to protect their future. We all know that it's time for a global reset towards a more green economy. We must stop subsidies for fossil fuels and divert these billions of dollars into transitioning to clean energy generation. New Zealand is leading an initiative right now in the WTO ministerial context to reform fossil fuel subsidy, and it already has the valuable support of several Latin American countries, Chile, Costa Rica, Mexico, and Uruguay, and we're very open to all others to join us in that. We all know that biodiversity all over the world is in serious decline. The time for action is now, and New Zealand is stepping up. We've launched the Aotearoa New Zealand Biodiversity Strategy as a guide to the way we protect and restore nature. Let's work together, New Zealanders and Latin Americans, to increase our ambition on biodiversity protection, because it will be one of the best investments in our future. I began by looking back, drawing inspiration from the third of my 36-year career devoted to Latin America. And I am going to boast a little bit. Postings, summits, consultations, ministerial and lobbying visits to Mexico, Cuba 3 times, the Dominican Republic, Costa Rica, Panama, Colombia, where I've been living for the last 2.5 years, Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, Brazil, Paraguay, Chile, Argentina, where I lived for 4.5 years, and Uruguay. So do let me know if you know another New Zealand public servant with more Latin American kilometers on their odometer. But this is why I am going to champion the Young Professional Network. I back the optimism of your aim to provide a peer group right now for young New Zealanders who have returned to the country after study and their work experiences in the region. Excuse me. I love that your events program is going to be a dynamic mix of virtual and physical panels and roundtables that cover areas of mutual interest, including Indigenous economic development, including the digital economy and sustainability, and social license for trade. These are very current issues. And I make a promise to follow you and to support you as you deepen your businesses as young professionals, as you deepen the cultural ties between our country and Latin America, and as you build the capability and empower yourselves and others around you to be the next generation of New Zealand leaders to engage with Latin America. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, katoa.